Hey, what's happening, guys? It's GM Cody. Hope you guys have had a good week since last video. As you can probably guess, we're going to be talking about Doctor Who tonight. Not just Doctor Who. Specifically, we're going to be talking about Time Lord, the Doctor Who role-playing game from 1991. Most of you guys probably are not familiar with this one. It's a bit obscure. And pretty cool, too. So we're going to take a look at this tonight. I do have a PDF of this, which is available for free. The author made the rules available for free without any of the specific Doctor Who art. He was allowed to do that. And I'm going to post that in the show notes below. So before we start talking about Time Lord, talk a little bit about my background with Doctor Who. So Doctor Who is something I've been into for a long time. I got into Doctor Who before the new Who, right? Before the new show came out, whenever that was, 2004 or 5. I got into it sometime before that, when I was about 12 or 13 years old. I was wandering through the video store, looking at VHS tapes, when that was still a thing. And I was just looking. I would rent any kind of, weird science fiction or fantasy or anything like that. And I specifically loved old science fiction when I was young and still do. And so I spied a couple tapes on the shelf, and they were Doctor Who. And I had vaguely heard the name Doctor Who, but didn't really know anything about it. I didn't know anyone that knew what it was or had talked about it or anything like that. And so I rented, those couple tapes and brought them home and shoved them in my VHS player at home and watched these episodes of Doctor Who. Now, for any people that have not watched the old Doctor Who show, the original run of the show, they would have big story arcs that were, whatever, like 4 to 8 episodes or whatever, but they were basically one big episode compiled into a bunch of episodes, and that's how the old show used to work. It wasn't as episodic as the new Who show, but I'm also not an expert on new Who. So, but anyway, so I watched those few Doctor Who episodes, and I had no clue what was going on because it was right in the middle of a story, but I thought it was awesome, whatever was going on, and I kind of pieced together that, okay, this guy's got a time machine, and he's got these companions, and there's aliens and villains and stuff, so it was awesome in my book. And of course I went back to the video store, and they had a few more tapes, and I ended up renting those and watching them, and kind of forgot about Doctor Who for a little bit until I was about 15. And then I used to go to this game store called the Jolly Roger. Now, the Jolly Rogers was probably my favorite game store of all time, and it was one of the most short-lived game stores around. The guy that owned it, the gentleman that owned it, his name was Jay, and I haven't talked to Jay, in a long time, almost 20 years at this point, but he used to own the game store. At the time, Jay was probably about 30 or so, and I was about 15. So he had this little game store, and it was awesome. It was, just a hangout spot we used to go to all the time when we were in high school. And I spent countless hours there, even when I wasn't actually gaming. I would just go hang out at the shop with Jay. And, when Jay was slow, which most time he was, we would play games together. We'd play card games, and we'd play Warhammer. He had every kind of Warhammer army and Warhammer 40,000 army you could imagine. And we would watch movies and shows. And he was very much into BBC shows, but specifically he was obsessed with Doctor Who. And when it was really slow, he would, watch shows and movies, or sometimes he would just put something on in the background regardless. And a lot of times he'd have Doctor Who on. And so, one day I walk in and I'm like, "What's up, Jay?" So I'm watching Doctor Who. I'm like, "Cool." So I sit down and I start watching with him, and I got really interested in Doctor Who. So he let me borrow some of his tapes and whatnot, and I got really into it. And I've been a Doctor Who fan ever since then. Now, when the new show came out, I was unaware that it was coming out when it did come out. I got into it about a year or two after it already came out, and just happened to go over to a friend's house and see it on TV, and I was like, wait, what is this? Is this Doctor Who? Because I recognized, he's talking about being a Time Lord and there's a TARDIS, but it looked like a brand new show. I'm like, what is this, a new Doctor Who show? My friend's like, yeah, dude, you didn't know about this? I was like, no. And so I got really into it when it first came out, the new show, and I kept with it for 3 or 4 seasons, and I enjoyed it for the most part. I didn't enjoy it as much as the old Doctor Who show. Now, obviously, I've only watched 3 or 4 seasons of it, so I am not aware of anything that happens after that. So, I've heard people rant and rave about it and go on and on about it. But to be honest, when things get that popular, which, at that time, and I guess it still is the case, Doctor Who got incredibly popular there for a while. When things get that popular, for some reason, it just turns me off of it. And that was the case with Doctor Who. I kind of just lost a little bit of love for Doctor Who. Even though, I've never lost my love of the old show, for sure. I still watch old Doctor Who all the time. Occasionally just, we have, I think it's like Pluto TV, and they have like just old TV shows going on all the time, and they have a whole channel of just Doctor Who, and I'll put that on every once in a while and just watch random Doctor Who episodes when I just want to kind of like zone out, or whatever. So yeah, I've liked Doctor Who for a long time. Now, in the height of my Doctor Who fandom, there was no good role-playing option for Doctor Who. So I went looking and researching for different Doctor Who role-playing games. And of course, I'm aware of the FOSSA Doctor Who role-playing game. Now, that's one role-playing game I know very, very little about, surprisingly. You would think, me being a big old-school Doctor Who fan, and me being, of course, I'm a fan of FOSSA. I loved all their games back in the day, that I would have been aware of the Doctor Who game. And I was aware of it, but I've never looked into it. I don't know anything about it. And I realized I need to remedy that. So I'll probably look into either acquiring that version or just looking at some PDFs or something, because I would like to read through the old FOSSA Doctor Who role-playing game. And if you know anything about it, let me know if you've ever played that version. I have zero experience with it. Never looked at the books, or never even seen the books or anything. So, but it looks cool, and I'm sure it's pretty awesome. So I was made aware of that, and then I was also made aware of this Time Lord. And so one year, when I was a older teenager, probably 17 or 18, my sister was like, I wanted this game. Now, at the time, it was pretty hard to find, and I think it still is fairly rare, though on the secondhand market, these aren't too expensive. So if you see one for a lot of money on eBay or something, it's a scam. But these are fairly rare, uncommon, if not rare, I think. I've never seen one out in the wild. Now that's just my exposure, like my experiences with finding this book, but it might be different in your area or whatever. Maybe you have 1,000 of them hanging around in your half-price bookstore, but I've never seen one out in the wild around here. So my sister asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I just kind of mentioned this book and forgot about it. And this was months before my birthday, and lo and behold, she bought this for my birthday that year. And so I absolutely loved it, and I still have it. And I've played this game a lot, actually. It makes for a great one-shot game. It's a very simple rules-like system, and it's a pretty fun game. It's a little weird. It's a little quirky, but it's super rules-light. It's super fun and fast, and it captures the feel of Doctor Who really well, I think. And it's also something of a curiosity, right? So this game it came out in 1991 under, I think it's called the Vertigo impression that was making Doctor Who novels at the time. And of course, the Seventh Doctor was the last Doctor. The Doctor Who show had been over for a couple years at this point, and Doctor Who fandom, this was a really low point, for the Doctor Who fandom. There was no Doctor Who show. I think there was a movie that came out around that time, but it was a really low point for Doctor Who fandom. And Doctor Who was pretty much, for all intents and purposes, kind of dead at that time, except for the really diehard fans. So this came out at not a very good time for Doctor Who fandom, I think. But also, they didn't market this game as a role-playing game. They marketed it as just a book, a game book. When you look at this book, it doesn't say anywhere on it that it's a game or a role-playing game. It just says Doctor Who Time Lord. Create your own adventures in time and space. Ian Marsh and Peter Darvill Evans. And that's it. On the back, it kind of does, give you kind of synopsis on the back and kind of lets you know that this is a role-playing game. I think it mentions role-playing game a couple times back here. But if you just saw this hanging out on the bookshelf in the early 90s, you probably would have just thought it was another Doctor Who novel, which is, again, this is the company that produced the Doctor Who novels, produced this book. So it was really confusing and kind of got, forgotten about. But it does have a cult following even to this day. There are several, there's a couple fan-made supplements, and there used to be a very active and well-maintained fan website, though that's still not around. But I will post the links to the rulebook, which you can get for free, and the 2 fan supplements that have extra rules and character creation rules and all kinds of stuff in them, and conversion rules for the old Doctor Who role-playing game. So it's a bit of curiosity, Time Lord. And I just happened to, I hadn't looked at this book in a while, and I hadn't played it in a while. So I thought it'd be cool to talk about it tonight. So again, the version we're going to be looking at is the no art version. But I am going to, every once in a while, reference the book and what part we're reading in, so I can show you the cool black and white pencil art in the book. All right. But I still think it's easier just to follow along with the PDF. I do want to also mention that I have one other Doctor Who role-playing game, and that is the Cubicle 7 version. Now, I don't know if there's another new version of this or if this is still in print. I have no idea. I haven't kept up with any of the Doctor Who role-playing games. And as you can see, this book is minty because I've only opened it maybe once or twice. Probably twice when I bought it, and then again just now when I got it off the shelf, I was like, what is this game all about? And just kind of flipping through it. But I really don't know anything about this version of the game. If you do, again, let me know if it's any good. I know, I like several of the games that Cubicle 7 produced. I think they originally produced the One Ring role-playing game, which was really good. So I do have that version too. But tonight we're going to be talking about this. All right. So, Time Lord by Ian Marsh and Peter Darvill Evans. This was made in 1991, again by the Virgin imprint. I said impressions earlier. I'm wrong word. It's imprint. Yeah. So, obviously, this is a role-playing game about playing Doctor Who. They give you a synopsis about, what Doctor Who is all about and a short timeline about all the different doctors and the different eras of Doctor Who leading up until the current time period when this was published in 1991. So it goes all the way up into the Seventh Doctor. Then it tells you about the Doctor Who universe, which I think all of you guys know about, the Time Lords and Gallifrey and TARDISes and stuff. If you don't, go look it up on the internet. No, I'll give you a short synopsis. So basically, if you don't know anything about Doctor Who, which I'd be really surprised if you guys don't, basically it's about a time-traveling alien called the Doctor, who's from the planet Gallifrey. He's the people of Gallifrey are known as Time Lords, and they travel through time and space in devices called TARDISes. The TARDIS is It's a time travel device, which means TARDIS means time and relative dimensions in space. And the Doctor's TARDIS, well, I should say a TARDIS can camouflage itself, so whatever time period it goes to, it camouflages itself to blend in with that time period. But the Doctor's TARDIS malfunctioned when he went to the 1960s in the original show and became a blue telephone box, and it's been stuck in that form ever since, and he's never really bothered to fix it. He's kind of a rogue Time Lord, and he goes off on his own adventures, but he's a good doer and, fights against, evil aliens and villains and stuff, and he always has a companion from the planet Earth, typically one or two companions, that accompany him on his wild and crazy adventures through time and space and all that. So that's basically a breakdown of what Doctor Who's all about, right? If you want to know more, go look it up. Go watch the show. So then it gives you kind of like a short story called The Necromancers, which I like the picture here for the Necromancers. It's pretty cool. Check this out. And this book does have cool art. It's unfortunate that I couldn't find a good scan of the actual book to show you guys all the art, but I really dig this black and white art in here. So anyways, the short story is basically just trying to get you in the mood of what a typical Doctor Who, adventure or story is all about. And it's pretty cool. It's just a little short story. And then, skip further ahead, we get into, the basics of role-playing. It's interesting that it actually gives like a brief history of role-playing in this book, which I found really interesting. I can't really think of another role-playing game that gives you a brief history of role-playing at the beginning of the book, but there you are. It's in here. It gives you key concepts in role-playing, which we all know, the referee and players. This game uses 6-sided dice, and it uses a very strange system to figure out what you're, to resolve tasks. So basically the way it works is you roll 2 6-sided dice, preferably of 2 different colors, and you subtract, I guess you don't really need it actually. And you subtract the higher die from the lower die, and whatever that difference is your score on the die. And that's how you roll the dice. And how you actually do tests and stuff is you have attributes, and they go from 1 to 6, typically, unless you're some kind of crazy alien. And you also have skills that add to that. And the referee will set a specific difficulty task. And if your skill total or your attribute total is equal to or less than that, you have to make a test. If it's more than that, you just automatically pass every time. So it's a very interesting system. And then, of course, like you take the difference between the difficulty and your skill rating, and that's the number you need to beat on the dice. A little bit of a strange system, but it works really well and is fairly simple. And then there's like a solo adventure at the beginning of this, which is cool. I always dig solo adventures. Let's see if there's any cool pictures to go along with the solo adventure. Oh, there is. Yeah, check this out. This one's pretty sick. Check that one out. Pretty good. Pretty cool stuff. Drekar. So anyways, it gives you a solo adventure to play through. And then it introduces you to the basic concepts of the game, which I just pretty much explained to you. The 6-sided dice and beating the difference and all that. Another interesting part of this game is it does go into some length in telling you that you don't need miniatures, of course, but it has a really nifty system for using them if you want to use it. And it uses areas. kind of like the old Marvel superheroes game, which is what I'm thinking this concept was based on. So you have areas, and it actually recommends using like index cards and like drawing the terrain on the back of the index card and setting those up as different areas. And essentially you travel between those areas and, place your figures on there. And an area is like a broad area. It doesn't really give doesn't really say that it's a, specific like measurement or anything. It's a very loose and abstract method of measuring. But it works pretty good, actually. I've actually used this method when we're actually playing Time Lord, and it works really well, especially for chases, which in a Doctor Who game can happen quite a lot, and it seems to work really well for that. So anyways, that's a really cool feature of the game. Let's see if there's any other cool art. And there kind of is. It's very similar to the art we're looking at right now. You can see it's basically the same as what we were looking at in the PDF, but a little cooler. Movement is handled much in the same way through the areas. Now, if your movement score is equal to, if your movement score is less than the number of areas you're traveling, you don't have to take a test. But if it's equal to or more, of course, you got to take a test to travel more areas. So however many areas you travel is the difference that you have to beat on the dice to travel there. And of course, difficult terrain, which it goes into here, has a difficulty number. So if an area has difficult terrain, you have to make a roll to go through that difficult terrain. To each turn is I'm not sure what the timetable is on this game, like as far as like what a turn is. I think it's just like a few seconds, 10 seconds or something. I'm not really sure. I'm not even really sure if it actually tells you. These are your ability scores, and you have strength, control, size, weight, move, knowledge, determination, awareness, and other abilities. Pretty odd array of ability scores, I think. Especially size and weight are very strange ability scores and probably need some explanation. So, strength is strength. We all know what that does. Control is agility and dexterity. Size determines basically how difficult you are to be hit, which is really strange. I think control, I don't know. Anyways, that's what size measures. Weight, it basically just determines how easy it is to physically pick up the character and whether the character will fall through fragile floors or set off sensitive traps. It's interesting that there's a actual like ability score for that, but hey, whatever. Movement we just talked about. Knowledge, of course, is your knowledge to retain things, and the way it explains knowledge is that somebody further, because you're dealing with characters from all different time periods and dimensions, somebody that's further in time or from a more advanced civilization would have a higher knowledge score, and somebody that is not would have a lower knowledge score, because it's basically saying that knowledge is the knowledge of the broad universe as a whole and not just here on Earth. So that's a good measure of your broad knowledge of the universe, I suppose, and technology and all that. Determination is, it's basically resolve. And if you encounter, something scary, which happens a lot in Doctor Who, you would have to roll to see if you, don't flee. Awareness is pretty self-explanatory, right? It's perception. And then other abilities, which they call special abilities, which are essentially just skills, right? So special abilities, are just it's just a skill list, and it's things like, they do have some special ones like cheat death and iron constitution, pain resistance, quick recovery, independent spirit, so there are some ones that are I would say are unique to Time Lord. Like MacGuffin fits very well for a Time Lord in Doctor Who. TARDIS, knowledge of TARDIS, photographic memory, astrogation, So, it's really just skills. And they're related to a specific ability score. And basically, however many ranks you have in a skill adds to your ability score. And that's what your total rating is for that skill. And here's all the list of skills, as you can see. Let's see if there's any other cool art that I'm missing before we go any further. I don't think we have anything. Nope, not really. Oh, this one's pretty cool. Let's look at this one. This is actually earlier in the book. But I dig all this black and white art. There's not a whole lot of it in the book. So even having the art-free version, you're not really missing out on too terribly much, but it definitely adds a lot of the flavor and gets you in the mood for Doctor Who, I think. So that's the skill list. It's worth noting that this game assumes that you're going to be playing one of the doctors, and it has we'll look in a little bit. It has stats for all the doctors and basically all the companions up until the 7th Doctor, and it also has stats, of course, for all the classic Doctor Who villains and aliens and stuff up to that time. And it assumes that you're going to be playing the Doctor and one of the companions. And it doesn't really have any character creation rules as such in the book. What it tells you to do is if you want to create your own character, your own Time Lord, or really it only tells you, creating companions, but it works for Time Lords too, is you just work with your referee, tell him what your character concept is, and then you work through what your statistics are and what your skills are, and that's it. And the system's so easy. I think this is a really interesting and actually kind of fun way to create a character. It's just, and that's pretty much how I pretty much play it, the way it was recommended in the book when people make characters, because a Time Lord and a companion, and even the companions, could be vastly different and unbalanced, and it doesn't really matter in this type of game. So that's usually what I do when I actually play Time Lord with people. And of course, they want to make their own characters or a Time Lord. And we'll just kind of walk through what their character is all about. So, that's generally what I do when I'm making characters. Now, there is character creation systems out there. Like I said, in the 2 companion books, there's options for creating your own characters that actually have like a point buy system and all that jazz. So you can go that route too if you want a more cohesive character creation system. But in the basic book, there is no like cohesive character creation system other than it just says make it up and assign some numbers, which is fine in this kind of game. Let's see. I'm going to get a sip of my tea here. And combat. So combat works pretty much the same as all the other tests we've been talking about, except for your difficulty rating is going to be the opponent's defense, and that is based on their size, like I was telling you about earlier when we were talking about the ability scores. And so you take that difference between your total combat skill and their size, and that is the number in difference that you have to beat on the dice. And that's basically it. Of course, you have different types of actions you can take in a turn. It does have like a pretty cohesive combat system. You can only do so many things in a turn and move so many areas, etc., etc. You can also you can parry in close combat once per turn, or evade, and it adds your control score to your defense or your weapon score if you're parrying with a weapon. You can also forget what. You can go full defense basically and forgo your attack, and you can add your control score, I believe. And here's all the options you have in combat. And like I said, it's actually fairly detailed considering how light the rest of the system is, and it makes for a really good combat system. You have wounds. I think your wounds are your strength basically. And the way wounds work is if you hit somebody in combat, you determine what kind of weapon you're using, and that determines how many wounds you deal. So you deal that number of wounds. Now, if it's less than your strength, equal to or less than your strength, you're fine, but you have to make a test to see if you are overcome by your wounds. And so you don't even have to reach your hit point threshold to actually fall unconscious. Basically, anytime you're taking wounds, you got to make a test. Now, if you go over your strength, then I think you automatically pass out, if I remember correctly. Let's see. Damage. Where's damage here? Wounds. Armor, effects of wounds. The defender is automatically overcome if the number of wounds inflicted is greater than his strength. So there you go. Yeah. There's also other, special things you can do in combat. You can aim, overwhelm an opponent, disarm, grapple, grenades, group fire, shooting in a melee, snapshots. It gives rules for all that stuff. And then it goes into weapons, which I'm going to follow on the book here. I don't think there's really any other good art until we get to all the characters and stuff. No, there isn't. So weapons, are very basic in this game. You just have very generalized types of weapons. And of course, it's easy enough to make up your own weapons if there's something missing here. And it tells you, what the range is of ranged weapons and how many wounds they inflict. And, same thing for close combat weapons, how many wounds they inflict based on the weapon. And of course, for some kind of special, supernatural or super sci-fi weapon, you could just use this chart as a gauge and make up your own weapons easy enough. And that's how weapons work. I don't think there's any rules for ammo or anything like that. There is rules for armor, and armor soaks damage. So if it, if you have an armor 8 and you dealt 6 wounds, they won't take any wounds yet. You have to make a test. Again, so whatever the difference is between the armor and the wounds, you have to make a test to see if you actually take those wounds or if your armor soaks it. And of course, anything under armor value of 5 is considered primitive armor. Anything armor 5 and above is considered advanced armor. If you have armor, which, in the actual show, most of the time, the doctor and his companions usually aren't wearing armor, but a lot of their villains and, the mooks and stuff probably will. So that is a factor. And there could be some companions if they're military or combat oriented. Death and injury we already talked about. Though I don't know how you die. So a seriously wounded character, basically if you're seriously wounded, you've taken more than your strength score in wounds, who does not receive medical attention, takes 1 wound for each hour he does not receive attention. Such a character will eventually die. I think it's double your strength score, if I remember right. Yep, right here. A character is dead if the number of wounds he has taken is greater than twice his strength. Okay, there we go. Recovery, you can, there's a couple ways to heal. You can use first aid, which is a skill. You can use medicine to recover wounds. And of course, you can do natural healing to recover wounds as well. Poison, the rules for poison. attacks the strength of the character with its full, wounds rating. Falls, gives rules for that. Suffocation and drowning. And then we get into, the cast, which I'll probably just kind of switch to the book here so we can look at it. But basically, it gives all the different characters that we're accustomed to from Doctor Who. So, you got all the doctors. There's the first Doctor and the second Doctor. And then, of course, we got the third Doctor. And again, I really like the art and portrayal of all these characters. And my favorite, and most people's favorite, I guess, of old Who fans, the fourth Doctor, the fifth Doctor, and the sixth and seventh Doctors, respectively. And then, of course, we get into the companions. You got Ace and Adric, Barbara Wright, Sergeant Bidden, Ben Jackson, the Brigadier, always a favorite returning character, Dorothea, Harry Sullivan, always liked him, Ian Chesterton, Jamie McCrimmon, awesome, Joe, and then of course K9, the robot dog, Leela, Liz Shaw. So they have quite a few of the companions in here. Romana is in here, of course, the other Time Lord. Sarah Jane Smith, which she also made an appearance in the new Who, if I remember right. And so there's tons and tons of companions in here. And then you get into some aliens, Benign and Malevolent. There's the classic Cybermen, Cybermat, and of course everybody's favorite, the Daleks. Exterminate. Awesome. There's a regular Dalek in here, a black Dalek. Draconians. All kinds of stuff in here. Generic, robot. See if there's anything good. There's some generic profiles in here, like just a regular human soldier. The Sontarians or whatever. Let's see, what other good ones? Zygons. That's cool. And some, major villains from the Who show. My favorite villain, Davros, is in here. The creator of the Daleks. The Master, classic Doctor Who villain, is in here. The Meddling Monk, he was a cool one. And then it goes into, different types of some kind of like appendix materials. So it's got transports in here, cars and helicopters and bikes and all that stuff. And then it goes into, the features of the TARDIS and all the different, and it gives you a little bit layout of the control board inside the TARDIS. And some different specialty tools that the Doctor and his companions would use, and then some advice about running a Doctor Who game, and then it gives you some examples of all the different abilities and some appropriate ratings, and compares them to things. So like knowledge 1 would be animal instincts, knowledge 3 basic reading and writing. knowledge 5, educated to graduate level, knowledge 6, human maximum in the 20th century, and knowledge 7, future human knowledge, cybernetics, etc. So it gives you comparisons compared to the numbers and what those mean. So that's always good. The difficulty modifiers for the referee, so he knows what to set the difficulties at. Research turns and how long it takes to do various research tasks like repair a watch or radio, or build a small electronic item, or build a MacGuffin, or repair the TARDIS or whatever, and then how much time is needed to actually do that. And then of course there's a option for hurried research turns, and of course this is actually a really cool thing, because it's a pretty big feature in Doctor Who shows where the Doctor or his companions are trying to hack into something or make something or whatever. So it's a common occurrence in the Doctor Who show. So it's cool that it has a pretty definitive rules about how to handle those situations. I'm really tripping over my words tonight. Sorry, guys. Some rules for cutting tools for some reason, which makes sense, I guess. Gives rules for explosives, and how to invent adventures, and it kind of gives you a guide to making adventures, and it gives an example adventure in the back, the Templar Throne, which I have no idea what this adventure is about. I don't think I've ever ran this adventure. But I guess it has to do with the Templars. So yeah, there you go. But it looks pretty cool, and it's got some maps back here for the adventure. Some maps of like a crypt underneath this building. Cool, kind of a dungeon crawl for Doctor Who. Right on. And looks like a pretty cool adventure actually, and some different villains and monsters and companions that go along with the adventure. Looks like a pretty like full and hefty adventure actually. And then it actually goes into the adventure. So, and I think that's about it. And then it gives the rules, of course, like I was talking about, creating companions, which it tells you just assign numbers, and it gives guidelines to do that. And then it gives an example of a made, your own made up companion. It does have some other combat rules in the back, and designer's notes, which is I always liked reading those kind of things, what was going on through their head when they were writing the game. And also a little letter to the Doctor Who fans in the back, which I don't think I've ever read that. I'll have to read that sometime. And of course, character sheet, which is nice and short and sweet. And that pretty much is Time Lord, the Doctor Who role-playing game. This video was actually quite a bit shorter than most of my videos, and I figured it would be. I'm a little out of it tonight, so I figured this would be a good one to talk about. I really like this game. It's really fun and lighthearted. And of course, if you like Doctor Who, I think this really captures the feel of Doctor Who really well. I think Doctor Who kind of operates more in that space of a little bit more free-form role-playing game, and this game definitely does that justice. But to be honest with you, this is the only Doctor Who role-playing game I've actually played, oddly enough. So, interesting. Even though I have this other one, and whatever. But yeah, let me know. Let me know what you guys think of Time Lord. Have you ever played this game? Have you ever looked through this game? Or have you ever played any of the other Doctor Who role-playing games? I'd be interested to know. I hope you guys have liked this video. Make sure to give me a thumbs up. It just gives me an indicator whether you, like the video or not. And that's kind of what I gauge. I kind of gauge you guys' interest about what I'm going to make videos about. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Stuff coming up. Of course, Friday, we are starting the Lord of the Rings book club. It will be the birthday of the illustrious Bilbo Baggins. And we will be, of course, Hopefully you will have read the prologue by then. If not, not a big deal. But we're going to actually, me, Andy, and my friend Vince are actually going to be reading the prologue to The Lord of the Rings. And then Friday we're going to get on and discuss it on a live stream about the prologue. And of course, just our experiences with Lord of the Rings and what we love about it and what we hate about it, or how we came about it or whatever. We're just going to be talking Lord of the Rings, and hopefully all you guys will be joining us and discussing with us. We might have some guests. We might have some people pop in. I don't know. Nobody seemed too interested in doing that yet, but maybe they will, maybe they won't. And then we're actually going to start reading Lord of the Rings, of course. And every other week, I said every week in the initial video, but it's going to be every other week, we're going to be discussing 6 chapters. So that's 6 chapters every 2 weeks. The way I break it down is 3 chapters a week. I've already explained this several times, but I'm explaining again. Of course, Sunday we'll be continuing the Prowlers and Paragons game, hopefully, if everybody shows up and everybody shows up on time. The OSC game, we did have a session 0, and that was a bit of a disaster, unfortunately, for a bunch of reasons. But you won't find that video on the channel anymore because the quality was so low. I just dumped it. But we will be continuing that game. We're going to be working out the bugs and the kinks, and I promise you guys next time, hopefully, I can't promise you anything, but hopefully it will be better than last time. A little bit more organized, at least. And the audio problems will be taken care of before we go live, which honestly I thought they were this time around, but I digress. But yeah, I'm going to leave you guys there. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and we'll catch you next time. Peace. Have a good one.